Welcome back to, I've been thinking about this and I couldn't think of a better person to ask this question to. Do you think history is realized in the moment or do you think it's realized later down the road and then that's when it's written about?
Um, I would say later, just because it depends on say if it's a war, it depends on who won it. And then they'll go back and rewrite everything. You know what I mean?
Well,
So,
everybody says nowadays, like you see it all over the place, we're in an unprecedented time. I'm like, okay, like it didn't hit me until, and this is going to sound super stupid as an example, but hit me this morning when I was following an ad on like Hulu that was for the Taco Supreme Crunch Wrap for like Taco Bell. And it was
yeah.
like this, it was a grilled chicken in a taco with like this chicken outside a shell or something. And I was like, this is an unprecedented time. Like that's when it hit me. It was like, oh my God, like we're in like I couldn't think maybe 10, 15 years ago when I was getting a taco 12 pack from Taco Bell that I would literally be like, oh my God, like one day there's going to be the chicken that's the shell. And I'm like, now what is happening right now in the world where everyone's like, this is going to be remembered in history forever. And I'm like, I don't know if it's just because to me that it hasn't hit me like that as much as that Taco Bell thing did. But, like, I don't know, because I mean, they always say pandemics in the past and everything like that, but I'm like, that is an unprecedented thing. I never thought in the fucking world that we are living in today that we would have a taco with a chicken shell. That to me is like beauty.
Yeah. So we've had pandemics, but not that yet.
Not the taco. No, not the taco.
Yeah, it's a funny way to bring up a point. I know, because we run that History Watch page. Uh, we get a lot of people if we do anything too recent that are like, "Oh, in the last 20 years or so, that's called journalism, not history." And so I'm trying to wrap my head around what do people think is history and how long does it take, before it's dubbed history and not just journalism.
Well, you said like
Uh,
I guess it would have to be the past, but what about the alien thing? Like that's an unprecedented thing for our whole future. We have no clue, but it's like right now it's like it's being recorded, it's all over the place. They're all like, "Oh my God, aliens." I've talked to some astrophysicists that have said that that little comet or whatever that they couldn't really describe in the sky might be a message from extraterrestrial life. And I'm like, that it we're recording that now, I think, because on the fear factor of if that is true, I pray to God it's not like the aliens in the Alien movie that freaking attach a little crawly crab to your face and have a baby go inside of you that explodes out of your chest in like 4 months.
yeah, I would definitely take the little green men over those. At least they seem reasonable. I don't know.
They just
But
seem easy to fight. Like you could just be like, "Hey, you look like me. You're a little bit smaller than me. I'm can you-" It's like when you're battling a toddler. I don't know if you've ever fought any toddlers lately, but like it's like you don't even there's no challenge. There's no aspect of like I'm going to get my ass whooped by this 6-year-old. No, it's like I am way stronger than you. I control your life if you live or die. So don't piss me off enough. You know what I mean?
yeah, I don't know. All that stuff's really interesting. I watched a documentary on it. Just it had such good reviews. So usually, when of those alien documentaries come out, you're like, uh, this is probably completely BS. And then you look at the reviews, and if it's like 5 out of 10, you're like, yeah, this probably got like one somewhat true story in it, and then 90% BS. And then, but no, it had like 90% on Rotten Tomatoes and like all the main websites. It was called The Phenomenon. Did you see it?
I didn't see that, but I wouldn't trust Rotten Tomatoes because they gave Norbit like a 7%, and I thought Norbit was an amazing movie.
You never trust the critics with comedies. Just they have such a different sense of humor. Like,
Like, all
like
right,
they had
let's
they had Anchorman at like 20%, I feel, for the longest time, and that was such a funny movie when we were little. Remember? So
the
I don't
original
know
is
comedies
good,
that
but
are
then when they do the prequel or sequel like Anchorman 2, I still thought it was okay, but I was like, all right, maybe we
it
should
was a
have
one
like
time.
yeah, we should have left that back in the past. But imagine if they make critics for aliens, like the first guy that goes up, meets the aliens and talks to them and comes back and go, they're all assholes. I'm going to be the type of guy like, hang on a second. Let me have my own. Because just like people, there are some people probably, if we both met a couple of people, different times, you would have a different reaction. Like, they were great guys, and I would be like, they were fucking dicks. Like, it's same thing with the aliens. I believe we all have to meet them separately. I believe they should just each one by one. It'd probably take a long fucking time, or just keep coming down and be like, hey, you want to grab a beer and chill? It's like I think it would you probably catch one on an off day where some guys like they were such assholes to me. All they did was make fun of me. I had to wear a
All they
shirt
did.
that was soaking wet the whole time. Like, how uncomfortable that was. And just like you guys went to a water park and like the aliens, okay, they had a bad day. They didn't get in the ice cream cone or something.
I guess. I don't even know. Aliens are just a funny topic. Who
How is
even
it?
knows?
How is it funny? I'm looking at the fear aspect of it of like, all right, if they have mind powers is my biggest fear because like I don't know. I'm just jealous because I don't know how many times I prayed to God when I was a kid, hoping I'd get superpowers. I didn't get shit. So I'm just like, if they have the molecular or whatever the capacity to be able to use like telekinesis or something, I'm going to be very, very jealous, and it's going to be very hard for me to be a friend. Like, when you're the kid in school that's like hanging out with a bunch of people. Next, one of the group members, I would say, gets a new bike, and you're like, I wish I had that bike. And you just look at them differently. Like, I, I like you, but I also fucking hate you, and I love your bike.
Yeah, speaking of that, that's what I was gonna mention about that documentary. Is it has a bunch of crazy crap like that in it, like the telekinesis or whatever.
What are
But
they
they some
basing that off of, though? What are they basing the telekinesis off of?
just kidding. No, there's just all these crazy stories compiled into one thing in the movie. It's like about, and they use real, former Air Force and people high up in the government and stuff. So you're just like, either these guys high up in the government are just so bored that they're just like, screwed, I'm gonna make people think I saw aliens and go around and do all these interviews, or there's some just random things going on that they just can't explain. But it was like a flying saucer went over DC, and I forget what year it was, but they like were ordered to shoot at it, and they like shot a piece of metal off of it, and they have that, and that was in the documentary. And then there was that other thing. It went really viral on Joe Rogan a few months back, I think, but it was the kids in Zimbabwe. Remember with the ship lands, and like that's literally, apparently aliens were literally talking to these kids, and it was like what you're saying with the telekinesis, and they're little children, so like elementary school tops, and like they were all like had the same exact story, which was really creepy, and they all were like, yeah, they told us we're killing the environment, and they're like, the kid, how does this kid even know what the environment is? He's like so little.
First off, I like to be a skeptic, and at the same time, I like to fact check. If you're saying all their stories matched up, is that what you're saying? That all their
They
stories
all did, yeah. And then
okay.
apparently it was in Zimbabwe, but it was like I couldn't tell if it was like an actual Zimbabwean school or like an expat school or something like that.
So
Maybe I'm just dumb
here's
for assuming everyone's white in Zimbabwe, but all the kids, a lot of them were white, so it was like, I don't know, they seemed British or something. Maybe it's something to do with like old things left over from colonial times there. But
hold on. Here's the big proof factor is if they all have the same exact story and it's a really good story. Have you ever heard a small kid tell a story? It's not entertaining. It's not fun. Like they can't craft out, they try and add parts and then
yeah.
and you're like, oh, so if they all have the same story, that's proof factor to me right there. Is that okay? Maybe they all didn't put their creative imaginations in there. Like if you're listening to the story and they say these aliens came down here and started talking to us, communicating us, and that's it. I'm like, that makes a lot of sense. But then if they go like, and then the aliens gifted us this golden unicorn, and I'm like, all right, hang on a
No,
second.
it was nothing like that. The only crazy part was it was supposedly felt like a very long time when it wasn't. So there was some weird stuff going on, and that they felt like they were telling them all this weird stuff about like the environment and killing the earth and all that. So, but all their stories sync together, and it's funny because in the documentary they have all the, not all of them, but a good chunk of the kids meet up as adults, and they all still are like, yeah, that was crazy, right? It actually happened. Like I thought I was nuts, and then I would talk to you guys again and remember it actually happened. And then the teacher, was like super mean, like in the 90s or whenever this happened. Was like the kids like shut up about aliens. We have work to do. Like you didn't see aliens, you dumb kid. Like going off. And then now that she's older, she's like, yeah, maybe I was too hard on them. Like a lot of things are pointing that something actually happened. It's like I'm like, all right, if the meanest teacher of the school is changing her tone, maybe something happened. I don't know what it was. Maybe some weird test or something to see.
So what I soaked up out of that was I need to go back to my elementary school when all my teachers used to throw me into detention and be like, I told you all the times I was acting crazy was for a reason. I was low blood sugar or something, like that you end up finding out later. But it's like, if she's now apologizing or now saying like maybe there is something, first of all, if a teacher says you're all stupid kids, somebody needs to look at that teacher's resume and be like,
No, I don't think she said that, but I think she was just like, what did they do in recess that they think there's aliens? Like, I'm getting too old for this job. Yeah.
why are they intervening now? Like, why is this just becoming a big thing now? Like,
Some guy, he made a documentary and he just compiled like that, the Washington D.C. incident, and then a series of other stuff like one saucer or whatever bright lights that flew over like an airbase in the UK. And he puts it all together in a great way to where it's called The Phenomenon, which is cool because it's just like these things all supposedly happen. Like, what do you think like that means? Instead of just all this BS about these specific aliens came in this year, and so it wasn't like you could believe every single thing in it, but you were like, well, these things supposedly did happen, so it's kind of fun just sitting there wondering what actually happened with all these so I thought it was interesting. It was on Amazon. You can check it out. I watched it so I was watching Joe Rogan, and he had the director on. I forget his name, but um, all the stuff they're talking about was like what I was telling you. So I'm like, well, that sounds pretty nuts. I got to see that for myself.
yeah, but why wouldn't they intervene way back in the past? Like people always say, like, well, maybe they did, or maybe we just now they're just making themselves known. But like, why would they wait till now to make themselves known? It can't be on that factor of the planet. It's definitely not because of that. If they've already been here, it could be a planet thing. But the fact that they just intervene now, like 2020, was like, all right, everybody's in their fucking homes now. Maybe we can walk around. It leads to my Bigfoot theory, which a lot of people are saying makes sense, but then they're like, Bigfoot is a species of ape. I've changed it from being maybe he's not interdimensional where you can see him by taking drugs and it's just kind of like a spirit guide type thing. I think maybe the aliens, let's say there was like three guys in a lab in like a giant spaceship and they're looking down on the planet and they go, all right, so there's the human Homo sapiens. Then there's another species of ape down there. Scan that one and we're going to make costumes of that one. And then they just come down in this like really like they get this costume or whatever. Like, Santa Claus, is it the second one where they make the clone? It's like a really shitty version of the first one. It looks like a
Yeah.
doll. So I'm
Yeah.
like, they made a gorilla costume like that. And the one dude's like, dude, they're not that fucking dumb. That looks nothing like the gorillas. I mean, it has similarities, but come on, man. The posture's all off. And it's like, dude, they're so stupid, they wouldn't even pay attention. And then they come down here and that's just them in disguise mode, but they literally don't give a shit if we figure it out or not. Like, it's like when you're around a room of toddlers, you can convince them you're David Copperfield by a couple like stupid magic tricks. You can convince them that you're God. So I'm like, that's maybe the aliens coming down here and they're like, their level of intelligence is so low. They'll never figure out that, it's not Bigfoot. It's just us in a costume.
I'd like to think that if they came all the way here, they probably had more clever ways to disguise themselves than to put a Bigfoot costume on and walk all over.
I mean,
But I do think it's funny. They'll probably just end up caught and kidnapped by some crazy redneck up in Washington or something.
that's always true in every single alien movie where they always
It's like
crash
TV
land.
shows about
There's
those crazy guys looking for.
Yeah, whenever they crash land or something, there's always a redneck that's just like the first person to encounter them. I'm like, you're literally seeing the dumbest of the dumb. Like, I'm not making fun of rednecks, but when the guy's like picking his belly button and he's like, "Oh, you came from a giant metal bird in the sky." I'm like, can we get like a Neil deGrasse Tyson to meet him first so we just don't seem like a giant jackass?
That's funny. That would be a good movie. Have you seen Tucker and Dale vs. Evil?
Yeah.
Yeah, do like that, but with aliens instead. That would be too funny. Like no one believes them. It's aliens.
these college kids are just coming all over the place, just killing themselves. He goes, you expect me to believe that these college kids, he jumped head first right into that movie is like what Karate or the Cobra Kai movie did recently, or when it came out, was showing the other perspectives of like, these are why these
Yeah,
guys aren't friends. I like seeing that. I want to see more. I
yeah, I
wish,
thought it was really clever.
Chris,
Yeah.
what are you doing to me? I was going on a rant and you cut me off. No, I'm just
Sorry.
kidding. No, but I mean, with Cobra Kai, like I like that whole other perspective thing. And like when the aliens information was coming out, I was like saying, like, how many times throughout history has there just been a perspective that's lost that might add or bolster up to a situation or a current event? You know, like I always mention Paul Revere's Last Ride or whatever. You know, he's running through the town, the British are coming, the British are coming. I'm like, at any moment, was there a person that gave him false information? Was there this whole thing? Like, was there a giant mix up that we just don't have that information yet? And it comes out like 10, 15, 20 years later when someone actually digs into it.
Yeah, that'd be interesting. And also that it'd be really interesting just to see like I think I saw it a bit in that show, Turn Washington Spies, but like just say like a British guy who just like there on deployment for work and he's just like shit. I think they're all pissed off at us or stuff. Like the other side of that. Like
Well,
the British are coming and you're like, wait, we're coming where? And then
have you like read anything besides that might bolster up like maybe some false truths in your head, like stuff that you learned about that wasn't the actual thing? Like I learned about like with Operation Paperclip and stuff kind of made me change my thoughts on like NASA in general. You know, I started
I don't
questioning.
even know what that is, Operation Paperclip.
Oh, where when we won the war against Germany, everybody split up the Nazi scientists, and we took a lot of the ones that involved in our space program.
Yeah, and NASA. Yeah. Um, I don't really know too many situations like that, but that is very interesting. I'm sure, later one's gonna come to my head, but oh well, I mean the obvious one is the most glaring obvious one I can think of is the Christopher Columbus like discovered America in
Wait, you
1492.
you're telling me he didn't discover America? What did he do?
No. I mean, he discovered like like an island. Which one was it? I'm trying to remember. The Caribbean, right? Like Cuba or something, or the Bahamas. And then the Vikings came here way beforehand, and I don't know. And then all the stuff about like if you watch the movie on it, especially obviously movies get things wrong even more than history books, but how he like saved all the natives and civilized them and all that. And in reality, he was just a terrible person, and like even his own crew like hated him. And
Well,
um,
I was talking to an anthropologist who was talking about like apparently someone had wrote a book that changed her perspective on a lot of people around the time of like Columbus came over here. Everyone thought, oh, there's a theory that the Native Americans didn't know what those ships were. They were curious and they thought these were aliens coming over here, not aliens of a foreign land, but like this futuristic thing they'd never seen before. So they came over with gifts. And I was talking to the anthropologist, and she's like, that's bullshit. I was like, what do you mean it's bullshit? Like the alien, it would make sense if you've never seen a ship before and you're way back, I would say maybe 10, 15 years back in technology, and you see a ship come over, you're going to be like, oh, they're freaking aliens. You know what I mean? But instead, what happened was that they came over here, Christopher Columbus, they got off the ship and everything, and they saw these people that were eating each other, murdering each other, heads on spikes and all these types of things. And like, oh my God, like, I don't know what made him decide that he wanted to plant his roots there and be like, let's build fucking homes. No, I would have sailed to like the other side of the beach, but it was just this aspect of like, that's somebody's idea was like, oh no, the Native Americans didn't know what those were. And then that perspective gets tossed into history. And next, everybody's turning into like a schizo where it's like nobody knows what to believe anymore. It's the issues with this alien thing is that government could just write something and just post it, be like, aliens probed me. Everyone's gonna be like, oh my God. And it's just this whole thing of like, you're creating a world now. If you want to talk unprecedented times, is now the world is becoming schizophrenic where nobody really knows what information to believe anymore. And everybody's kind of like got that creepy side of a conspiracy, I would say.
yeah, I mean, I think we saw that with the election. Like there's still people that just literally don't believe that the election is over. Like it's not over. We get really annoyed because my girlfriend runs a lot of the Instagram for the History Watch, and she put something like Joe Biden is the new president. Just factual stuff, like just because it was trending. So we just threw it in one thing, or Kamala Harris is the first Black woman vice president. Not like we love Joe Biden or we love Kamala Harris. Just like this is what happened, and then we'd get all these crazy people like it's not over commenting and like all this creepy stuff like in his dreams. Yeah, right. More like China's president. And we're like, what are these people talking about? Like the
It's
misinformation and
they
stuff has gotten so
That's what I'm
bad.
saying is the perspective that we don't see is because they've seen a bunch of different articles that might be false news, like
Yeah.
some WebMD shit, or next thing you know, they're looking into it like, this is all like I had so many people during like this whole pandemic when like that we had the riots that were happening that were messaging me saying, he's
Yeah.
not dead, he's not dead. I'm like, are you fucking high? Like you're like the way that they say it, they have a really good argument in the way that they think about it. But a lot of times it's like this world is it's tearing us apart on the aspect, I believe, with the amount of information that's out there. You read one article telling you like Coke is better than water. The next thing you know, it's like everyone starts thinking differently and everyone's like, well, Coke is better than water. Next thing you know, we're fucking watering our crops with Coke. Like it doesn't make sense.
Like idiocracy.
That's probably the best representation of where the world is going to, is that we
Yeah.
keep putting famous people in office. Next thing you know, well, people are like, put The Rock in office, put Kanye in office. I'm not saying they're not innovators. I'm not saying they might have a good
Definitely don't
idea,
put Kanye.
but I don't, in 100 years, if that progress goes that way, then we're probably going to be like, let's do fucking Hulk Hogan as our president. I'm like, no, we have to remember we got to put people in office that are actually, know a little bit about what the economy is, not how many billboards or things they can make to sell a couple of albums.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I mean, hopefully we don't end up with the Mountain Dew Johnson. I feel like we've learned uh, that a celebrity isn't the best approach to the president. We'll see though.
Maybe if everybody's dumb like that, though, it would make maybe a better society because I feel like you would give a shit about a lot less. You know what I mean? Like it
Yeah,
would
I don't know. I mean,
suck for our planet, but it would be amazing with the amount of conflict. People just want to go into a video game and kill people in the video game instead of doing it in real life. I'm like, perfect.
yeah, who knows if they'd fight more or less if everyone was dumb.
And somehow, like, depending on what your stance is on social media, like, did you see Tesla or Elon Musk sent up that S9 rocket or something and it exploded when it went up into the sky? Did you see that?
Yeah, I used to get excited every time you would have like a rocket launch or something, but now I'm just like I'm gonna look at it afterwards because like watching them blow up is just like way to kill the mood. And I'm like, oh, we'll never get to Mars. Screw this. Let's turn it on. And then I'm like, all right, I didn't watch this one. Let's see how it went. I'm like, oh yeah, it went blew up too. I'm like, I'm wondering. There's a small chance in my head. I'm like, this might just be some Ponzi scheme where he knows, like, we're never getting to Mars. They're just gonna keep giving me too much money to build these rockets and blow them up.
I can just picture you like at the launch site being like, Grandma, I got the whole family from all over the globe. Like all the Joneses all came together in one spot. And the next thing you know, this rocket, as soon as it fires off, just explodes. You're like, well, I mean, eventually after a while, you're going to have a little bit less faith in the man to where the point where like, I'm going to watch it the next day to see what actually full on happened. But it was making a rocket that could be able to land, like, do the whole drop back down instead of just firing it up and then catching it in the sea or something. It was supposed to be able to re-land, but then it just fell out of the
Yeah.
sky and exploded. And they're like, well, I guess we'll start working on the S10. I'm like, hang on a second. I saw so many people's perspectives on that when he posted that on Twitter. One person was like, what about the 100-mile radius that is completely destroyed, the habitat where all these animals lived in, that is not going to be habitable because of this explosion? I'm like, I never even thought of that one. Like everyone's like, just fire another one up there, Elon. I'm
Yeah.
like, oh yeah, I didn't even think about all the little reptiles that aren't going to be able to inhabit that area again.
Yeah, there's a lot of mixed feelings on it. I've always been into sci-fi and space and all that. So am I like deep down, I'm like, I think it would be so cool if they did make it to Mars and put, a little settlement up there. There's just people living on Mars. Like that would be crazy, you know. But
Why Mars
I've
though? Why wouldn't you pick the moon?
well, I think it's just because Bezos already claimed the moon.
What do you mean Bezos claimed the moon?
I just imagine that there's like these rich guys are just like playing poker. I mean, I'm like, all right, if you lose, you get the moon. I get the. I don't know,
Is it like a star?
if you
Can
look
you
at
own that?
well, they're fighting over satellites now, and it's funny because a lot of my friends are very like progressive, liberal, and stuff. So they're like, well, maybe we should fix the planet before we waste all this money going to Mars and the moon and all that. And I'm like, I totally understand that because it is getting absurd because there's just like it's not even NASA anymore. It's just two guys that have gotten so rich that are like, I don't know, maybe I'll go to Mars. maybe I'll go to the moon. And that now they're fighting over these satellites. So they're like in a I don't know, like a bidding war or something, but Bezos is buying all these satellites, then Musk is buying all these satellites, and then obviously who owns more of the satellites just wins this whole thing and will have to give in and sell theirs or something. I have no idea how it works, but I just thought it was funny because they own more satellites than hopefully I'm not mistaken on this, but than like the military and the government. Just these guys, like that's nuts if you think about it. And I know Bezos wants to do his Blue Origin is what it's called and put his stuff on the moon. I'm not sure about Mars. And then I know Musk is like focused all on Mars. And someone told me they actually have resources on like both the moon and Mars that they can get. And that's why they're interested in it. I don't know what they're going to be mining or what up there, but I think that's pretty crazy if you think about it, that they're just unrestricted going to be able to go up there and do whatever they want. Hopefully it doesn't affect something we don't know about. You know what I mean?
Do you think Mars is an issue? Like, do you think like us trying to settle out or build a settlement up there, or at least contact there, or be able to land there? You not see that as an issue? Like, imagine if we hit that planet and just like every other fucking space movie where they land on a planet mining for stuff, they open up some Pandora's box of horse shit that ends up
Yeah.
killing everybody and then coming back here. I'm like, I don't want to land on Mars and find out there's all these pyramids that are just like the ones in Egypt. And it's like all their hieroglyphs. And the aliens are like, what are you doing in my fucking house? Like, what are you doing in my house? You're like, oh my God, I didn't know anybody lived here. This every time we scan the planet, it's barren. It's like, this is my planet. I'm different than you. We're not the exact same. I mean, they identify exoplanets on what our idea of life is. So, what about the other idea of life of maybe this thing has fucking gills. Maybe this thing has 7 arms and can breathe dust. Like we're
Yeah.
looking for people like us, not other things that might be all brick or made out of like clay or something.
Yeah, I don't know. I think anything's possible, honestly. But I think it's gonna be much more of like them finding like the remnants of something that used to be there because it's such a messed up planet already. And like you could see signs with the that it had multiple ice ages and all this crazy stuff that they thought would be ridiculous just 10 years ago. So it shows that they don't know as much as they thought they knew. But I think it's going to be much more of like finding maybe not even an intelligent like artifacts of a civilization or something like that, but more of like species of animals that used to live there, like just with skeletons and fossils just like they do here. But I think even finding that would just be insane, you know. Imagine if it's like the size of a football field or something. You'd be like, holy shit, these things make dinosaurs look tiny. You have no idea what size they would be or anything. Like,
It's like the movie Interstellar where he goes onto the one planet and like 7 seconds is 7 hours on Earth time or whatever. So they were there for
yeah,
an
don't even get
hour.
me started on that. I have no idea what that means, and I never will understand like the time travel aspects of it.
Like, well, it makes sense because if you look at like how water is down here, like the deeper you go into our ocean, it's like time moves slower for some reason. There's just this aspect of like it might not be this. I mean, like if you popped up, yeah, it'd be the same time it is for everyone up here. But they found dino fish that Coelacanth fish that was 600 million years old, and they think the only reason it survived was it was so deep into the water where it was all dark that actually time moved slower down there. So I was like, it's the same relevant time. Time is just a concept, but the way your body ages based on sunlight, based on all these other environmental factors, the higher up we are to, I guess, land, based on in the water where it's just dark all the time. The sun and the moon are our coordinators of time. You know, when the dude was building fucking Stonehenge or whatever the hell it is, he was basing it off of like the sun and the shadows of it across the little rocks that he was stacking up. Then some dude just came up to him and was like, hey, did you account for time change? And he's like, fuck you, we're not doing that. That's a whole nother obelisk thing that we're going to build. But if you're underwater, you wouldn't know the sun passes. You wouldn't know what time it was unless you had an underwater watch that goes up to like 80,000 meters or some shit.
Yeah, I just never understood any of that, or like how someone aged faster because they had a job where they're always flying a plane. You know, like there's just a lot of craziness with that
Best
that I don't
representations
understand.
with our president. They look old as shit when they're leaving office. They have the gray hair. What's that? What's her name? Oh my god, I can't believe I'm blanking on her name. She's very, very popular. She has a gray streak in her hair. Oh my god, don't make me look this up.
She a politician or
Yeah, she is a politician. She was on a Joe Rogan podcast recently.
oh uh Hawaii girl.
Hawaii girl. Is she Hawaiian? Not
Yeah, she
Rihanna.
no, oh my god, I'm blanking too. She's the one that they all flipped out saying like
Tulsi
she's a rep.
Gabbard.
Yeah,
She has
she's Congresswoman from Hawaii, I think.
yeah, she has the gray streak in her hair, and she got that
Mhm.
when she was overseas with the troops. When she was doing speeches over there, she has experienced so much combat in 2 weeks that literally had shocked her system. And I know people are like, there are people that do like 12 tours and don't have gray hair. Well, everybody's genetically different. Some person sees the
Yeah.
movie Chucky and it doesn't affect them, and then the next person sees Chucky and they're fucking scarred for life, or they never want to see a doll ever again.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. I didn't realize she got the gray hair from that. I had a friend who had that, but he said it was just like something he's born with. So I just figured it was something like that, or a weird fashion statement. She wants to look like a villain or something.
Did she not question your friend and be like, so you were born stressed out? Like that's the whole thing.
You're
Like
born with PTSD.
that would suck. Every time you
Yeah.
see a vagina, just freak out.
Sad life.
Well, I mean, the colonization on moon or the moon, I would say, would be a better aspect to hit. I mean, we had projects on it for a very long time, Project A119. But trying to like, because if you look at everyone on Earth, not everybody, I would say, is at a good mental level, especially right now. So going and colonizing on a moon, you know how hard that would be if I put you in a spacecraft right now, sent you to the moon, told you you're going to live in this colony. And you're like, okay, but every time you leave your home, you have to wear a helmet. Every time you do all these. And I just started giving you a list of things that are required just for you to be able to survive. Eventually you'd adjust, but that fucking mental panic of like, you walk outside and there's just dead silence. Like,
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I couldn't do it. Um, Luckily, I feel like there's enough crazy people that do want to do it. Uh, and I don't know. Maybe with everything that's going on in the world, there's gonna be more people that are like, screw it. If there's ever a time to peace out and be the one stuck on Mars or the moon, it's now until they get their shit sorted out back on Earth. Um,
well, imagine a bunch of aliens came down and they were like, hey, we're going to take a large amount of your population and move you guys to another planet that's going to let you guys live just like the Earth was reborn again. But this Earth that we're on has a very limited number of years left, maybe let's say 200 years left on Earth. Would you be the person that stays, or would you be the person that goes with the aliens to a whole new planet to start over? Because I would stay. I'm like, I fucking like it here. You know, there's some shit to it, but at the same time, I don't feel like adjusting to a whole new planet. You know, 200 years, that means my kids are going to be fucked with that problem. I know that sounds bad, but I think of that towards myself. Like if I have like like my arm feels like it's about to snap or something's wrong in my body, I'm like, that's for future Robbie to worry about. And then like a month later, I'm like, I should have got it fixed.
yeah, I don't know what I would do, honestly. It would have depend so much on the situation, but I would have to see what this other place is like, and then also you have to wonder, are they just tricking you? And like, you get there and be like, this is not what we signed up for. It's like indentured servitude or something.
You'd have to ask them like a truth question, like 3 truths and a lie. You'd have to be like, "All
Yeah.
right, well then tell me what's better, Coke or Pepsi?" And they're like, "Honestly, I can't tell the difference." You're like, "All
And
right."
he's like, I prefer Dr. Pepper, and you're like, all right.
That's a fucking warning right there when he tosses out Dr. Pepper. You're like, "Oh, hang on, that wasn't an option, sir."
This guy's a serial killer.
Trying because it makes me think like, could I survive on another planet? But I just feel like it would be too tasking. I know people give this show a lot of shit, but Space Force, like, they had the guy go into the moon simulator where the astronauts that were
Yeah.
testing out in the desert, and he went crazy in a matter of like less than like 10 days. And I was like, you got to think, like, I don't think you understand the amount of stress that goes into your head. Like, my biggest fear was like when you're in space, you can't pee or something because if you stop, then like it can go back up inside you. I don't know if that's the truth. That might be a fucking lie somebody told me, but I was like, I can't do that. Like, if you spit, does it come out? Does it get stuck in your throat like a steak? What happens?
I don't know. That show's so funny though. I hope it's coming back. I haven't seen if it is or not.
I
The
thought they
spaceport.
canceled it because it was inconsiderate to other ethnicities.
What does that mean?
Means that they didn't have enough people of a different color onto the show, so they decided to cancel it.
Oh, I don't even remember how diverse it was. It seemed like it wasn't all white.
Yeah,
Um,
but they were like there was a lack of other ethnicities in it, so it was like seen as a. This is coming from a feminist that I talked to. She had said that it was a horrible show because there was too many white people in it, and I'm like, I didn't even see the color aspect of things, but I get your point. But I think you're kind of
yeah.
racist if you're noticing the color aspect of things.
I feel like with a show like that where it's an agency where people come and go, they could have easily just added more diversity, in the second season instead of scrapping it. I just liked it. I know it had like bad moments, but I loved, like, for example, the space games or whatever, when they do it's like paintball with the balloons. Like that
Yeah,
episode
yeah.
was so freaking funny. And just the phrase in general, like I had friends that wanted to get the shirt that said like boots on the moon.
Boots on
Like,
the moon.
it's like their motto is like they want to get boots on the moon by 2030 or something like that.
Do,
Meaning like they want military like outpost on the moon, which is just so stupid sounding. But I thought it was funny. I mean, I love Steve Carell though, so anything he does, I'm probably gonna be a fan of it.
you think that maybe in the next 50 years or 30 years that we'll be able to actually have a base on the moon?
I think so. I think it's more realistic than Mars.
Yeah, I think Elon's just claiming Mars because if everybody worked towards the moon, then nobody's going to be working towards Mars. So then he's just the guy that's way ahead of everybody to claim Mars first.
Yeah, who knows? I mean, he also said it's because there's water there or an ice or something, which I guess that would solve a lot of problems.
What
What do you
about
do
Buzz?
whenever your rocket just blows up? That's supposed to go back and get water, and you're like, yeah.
Yeah, that was the biggest question to me was like when you saw the astronauts that were planned for the mission that have been training to go to Mars and they see that rocket blow up. I'm like, how fucking good are you feeling right now about going to
Yeah,
Mars in that thing?
I honestly I don't know how they do it because it's just such a blatant risk. And I mean, the moon, it felt important for some weird reason to get there. It's like the space race and all that, but now you're like, is it really that important? You're like, oh, my dad died in the rocket trying to go to Mars, but we might get there by 2050. So I feel good about it. Like, I don't know. It doesn't
That's
really feel that heroic.
that's such a that hits so deep. Imagine a little kid being like everybody's it's like parent whatever day where your parent career day where your parents come in, everybody's like, I'm a firefighter. Like, Jimmy, where's your dad? And the kid just goes, my dad died in the space launch to go to Mars. Like,
Yeah.
imagine that being said, and the teacher's like, I never took a fucking class to handle that shit. Like, that's a big fucking candy for everybody. Recess, bring them outside or
It's
something. Jesus.
like, I'm sorry about your dad.
makes you kind of wonder a little bit too on the aspect of like if we like because Buzz Aldrin, for instance, he was the one that said that we had water on the moon, and then he said there was an obelisk on Mars. Well, we found water on the moon. So how much was he true on the obelisk on Mars type thing? I mean, first of all, NASA has to vet their astronauts, but a whole perspective of like putting four people into a capsule for an extended period of time and then sending them to the planet. I'm surprised that they factored in how these people would, I guess, uh, accommodate each other. How there would have to be somebody that would be in there that these conflicted personalities wouldn't arise. People with low stress levels are less prone to get angry, but also still some people with controlling aspects of their personality. I think that's pretty fucking important. I didn't even think of like that whole other perspective thing we're talking about.
Yeah. I remember the first time I thought of that was I liked that movie when I was a kid that Danny Boyle made, Sunshine. Have you ever seen that?
Mm-mm.
Um, Basically, like, you think the main issue is them surviving in space, but it's like actually a guy who's been stranded since the last failed mission out there, and he's just like crazy, and he's like, we didn't succeed because God didn't want us to, and then he's like trying to make ever sure no one else succeeds, like all the other missions that keep getting sent out there. And I'm like, man, I guess that people could just go nuts in space. I didn't really think about like, the person you send up being the problem you have to deal with. So that made me think about it. And then obviously there's that funny meme from Armageddon. Remember that cheesy movie with the
Yeah.
Aerosmith soundtrack back? uh, where he's
What do
like, he's
you
got
what do
space.
you mean cheesy movie? That's a good movie.
I don't know. Maybe I'll rewatch it again and see how long it holds up. Something tells me it's gonna feel very
You don't like fucking Bruce Willis and Ben Affleck in it?
I just remember like some of the stuff was so funny and cheesy. Like he's got space dementia. Remember? And the guy gets space dementia so fast, like not even like a month, just like a week.
Well,
He's already
you're talking about people going crazy. Imagine you're in a colony on the fucking moon and one dude just points a gun at the glass bubble that's holding all your oxygen in and just goes,
oh god.
"If somebody doesn't suck my dick, I'm going to shoot this fucking thing." And everybody's like freaking out like, "I don't want to do it,
Yeah.
but how do we do this? How do we take out this situation? And how did he get a gun on the moon?"
They're gonna be like, who let him on the moon?
It's like
How did he pass all the psych evaluations?
It's like, how do you test for a really good movie I want to that I want to say? There's a movie with Jim Carrey where it's something Irene. I forgot what the title of it's called.
Oh, Me, Myself, and Irene.
That movie is the best representation of how the mind is such a fascinating thing. Basically, on the aspect of that dude just developed random schizophrenia with bouts of rage out of just all the years of shit. How eventually you're on the fucking moon for 30 years and you're like, I'm a pretty well-rounded guy. My brain's really functioning today. And then the next day you wake up and you're just having like claustrophobic attacks where you're like in an elevator, you're afraid, but now you're on the fucking moon and there's no way to get you off of it. It's like, you just start freaking out, attacking people, stealing stuff. You'd probably be a shoplifter at one point.
Yeah, it would be hard to hide if you're a criminal on the moon. You're like, all right, we all know who's stealing everything all the time.
There's fucking six
One of the
people in
100.
this colony, so someone took it.
Yeah, that's funny. Yeah,
Sp-
the multiple personality disorder. What was that movie? Was it M. Night Shyamalan made it? Do you remember where the guy had like 21
Split?
personality? Split?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, imagine what that guy on the moon.
Would that be a problem though? Because like you
He's
sense
like your greatest hope and your worst nightmare. It's got like all these personalities.
well, that brings a better point. Do we want to send people with like severe insane issues like Marilyn Manson that we just can't fix? Or do we want those people to stay here on this planet while we move to the next one?
Yeah, I don't think they want any of those people up there. I'm sure, all jokes aside, they try their best to make sure they're the most calm, collective people ever, so they don't freak out. And
Because it would suck if you sent all your insanely mental people to the moon and then aliens come down and destroyed Earth. So the only people we had left are the insanely mental people. Where they're like, I guess we're going to have to start society. And next thing you know, there's just a whole race of people with like giant killer psycho personality disorders. Like, you know how when like people in true crime, they're trying to decide if the kid is going to have the same criminal intent or the same murderous intent as the dad or the parent did that was doing
Yeah.
the murders. Imagine a whole race of just killers like that, where it's like
Yeah, it's hard.
everyone wants to create a really good music album and at the same time drug people like Marilyn Manson.
That guy has always been nuts, though, man. I can't say you didn't see that coming. I mean, look at the guy; he's absolutely insane.
It's the government, bro. They drugged him, man.
Yeah, they're saying you sexually assaulted her. Like, what do you have to say about that? He's like, well, I didn't do that. That's like a complete fabrication. They're like, well, in your book, you say you did it. And in your book, you say you dream about smashing her head in with a sledgehammer. Like, what do you have to say about that? And he's like, oh, that was just a publicity stunt. And we're like, what are you talking about?
Like you did it the exact same way. It's like OJ. Like, can you imagine sending OJ to the moon? Just like he wrote a book, literally like, I didn't do it, but if I did, and it's like you just wrote a book on how you would kill. Like, I don't
Yeah,
see like his lawyer being like, this is a really good fucking idea. Like, tell them exactly how you think you would do it, and then we'll
no, I
compare it
don't.
to the actual crime.
That stuff's nuts. You imagine him on the moon. He's like, hey, Twitter world.
Hey, Twitter world, coming at you from Planet Sector 9.
Here's my next book. Like, if I killed my wife and moved to the moon.
I bet you like the astronauts, like if like they went up into space and like, I'm gonna be the first man on the moon. He jumps down, he says his famous words or whatever, but he didn't know that people were listening back at base. And he just goes, this is the perfect time to admit every sin I've ever done. And then it's like 3 hours later, and like everyone in the room is like, oh my God, we put a psychopath on the fucking moon. And he's just like, oh, and there was that time I was 26 and I drowned that one. And it's like, Neil, we can hear you in the helmet. And he's like, what? So you heard everything? Yeah, we heard all about the homosexual tendencies that you have. We heard fucking everything. And he's like, I don't want to come back, guys. I want to stay on this planet.
That is funny. And like you're saying, I guess it's not completely ridiculous to think that they would send criminals to the moon or Mars. Because,
The death penalty's gone.
yeah, think about Australia. Remember how, like, the British sent all their criminals, or like a huge, like, penal colony of them? So Australia was built a lot by criminals. So they, like, instead of serving their whole sentence in the UK or whatever it was back then, Great Britain, they could be moved to Australia and help like build the colonies there. So there's a good show about it. I'm trying to remember what it was called.
I've never heard of that before. So that would make sense that everything in Australia can kill you because it's basically like a prison.
Yeah, and that's why they're like freaking tough, and they talk like crazy. They swear nonstop, and all of it kind of clicked in my head. I'm like, yeah, that checks out.
That makes
They
sense
like
why the
they
C
sent.
word down there is just a fucking verb they use.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if they sent literal murderers or anything like that. But they sent like thieves and prostitutes and like all sorts of craziness down there.
You know, one thing I thought was okay with criminal punishment was back in the day when you used to be able to like, if you stole an apple, then they would chop your hand off. I'm like, that would stop criminals for sure. You know, like obviously you have an age limit, like you have to be over the age of 20 because how many kids steal things just on the necessity of they don't know a lot better. But
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't make sense when it comes to like the architect built the house, and then if the house fell on top of the person that bought the house, and the other person would be compensated by watching that person die. It's like that doesn't make sense to me because accidents fucking happen. I mean, imagine being a builder back then. Like that seems like a terrible craft to get into. Just because in the instance that you mess up, the next you know you have to pay with like your daughter has to be killed because you killed someone's daughter with the shitty house you built. Like, have you ever cut
Jeez.
corners? I mean, it would keep you an honest businessman, but at the same aspect, it's like you don't want that happening. You know, what happens if a tornado comes? You don't have insurance anymore, you know? We don't have fucking tornado
Yeah.
insurance.
I feel like there'd be a lot less stealing if they chopped off your hands when they did it. That's terrifying though. I can imagine like poor starving people just grab
Well,
one apple and their hands are gone for life. That's so messed up.
what's the thief thing now is what you have to pay a fine, and yeah, that sinks in for a while, but what's gonna sink in more than every time you go to write something, you have to use the hand that you can't write with because of the aspect you lost your other one after
I don't.
stealing a fucking Snickers bar.
I just. I don't think it's fair, man.
How is that not fair? To me, that seems like that's a
You
just
stole a
crime.
Snickers bar, so say goodbye to your hands forever.
All right, we'll do a finger for the Snickers. Does that make better sense?
No,
Damn it.
it's like 60 cents.
So wait, do I have to Google all my parts and all my body, like parts on the black market to see how much it would add up? Like you would have to steal 10 Snickers bars to lose a finger. You'd have to steal
Mm.
like what? Maybe like 30 things of like pipe tubing or something to
You're
get
just
like
gonna have
your
all
kidneys
these
taken
like
out.
handless dudes on welfare. That's the worst
You don't
idea.
get disability if you stole something and they chopped your hand off.
So
That
they
doesn't count.
you just wander around with no hands until you die. Hope someone can take care of you.
You got 2
I don't know.
feet.
I feel like there's
Learn to use your feet.
too many consequences to that they didn't really think through back then.
Do you think that there's ways because like people are evolving? I would say physically we haven't evolved as much as we have mentally, just on the aspect of like the way our minds thought. And like the past 10,000 years is different than, I mean, 10,000 years ago, our bodies were kind of the exact same. Maybe not weight wise or, height wise, just on the basis of food. But I mean, if you look at like we still don't have a third arm. We still don't have any giant genetic
Yeah.
modifications to our physical appearance. Like, how far until we accelerate that process? Because it seems like if you force something into a certain state, you can accelerate the evolution process. We've done it with like caterpillars and we've done it with other types of insects. So how far until we can get to the human
Yeah,
stage?
I don't know. I think if you read a lot about what Elon Musk thinks of this stuff, it's kind of interesting because he thinks um like the first evolution was with writing, and then he thinks the next one was like the printing press when they could print and distribute writing, and then after that it was the internet and now social media and how connected everything is, and then he thinks like having an iPhone is kind of a new one because like all the information you have access to, so there are like weird forms of not like our bodies evolving, but just like what we could do. And then he, especially with his Neuralink crap, if that ever turns out to be real or legit, connecting the technology completely to us, or having even that crap that's like in a Black Mirror episode or something, like with the contact lenses or glasses or anything, just having all that technology and information instantly accessible to us. I think that could, accelerate things because our brains would be operating at a level that had never been before.
I,
Um,
I wish it was more like multiple choice with cause and effect. Like if they showed you what this route would take and what the effect of it would be. Like we took out cursive. Now there's a large percentage of the population that does. There's more people not knowing how to write cursive than there is people who write cursive. So imagine doing that, but instead of like, I guess for cursive, we replaced it with the phone. We replaced it with like typing and stuff. So now people know how to do that skill. It just kind of evolved. But imagine if I give you a cause and effect of multiple choice of like, we're going to invent this and then this is going to be eliminated. I would like to see that, what that would be like. Okay, well, if we invented the Neuralink or if we invented phones, for instance, that the effect of that was with the amount of information that we have can make us smarter, but also increases the amount of mental health issues that happen
mhm.
because of how you're exposed to so much more.
Yeah, or like we got the internet and social media, and now newspapers are slowly fading away. Um, yeah, it's an interesting idea. I mean, I guess there's just no way to know what the cause and effect until afterwards.
That's what I'm saying. I would like to know what those were. Like, I think like in our research department, not only having a bunch of people agree on something is important, but also having people that question and bring that other perspective in there. Like, hey, there's going to be 5 fucking astronauts in a very, very small, cramped 4-foot space shuttle. Let's try our hardest to make sure that they can all get along. Nobody chews super loudly. Eventually, that's going to piss somebody off to where we're going to experience a fight on ship.
Yeah, I especially think that with the international ones where it's just a bunch of different people from different countries. I wonder if like the cultural differences get to them. And
Do you think it
imagine
would be
like the
better though, like if it's two
like
people
the
in
Russian guy like quit peeling your onions in space.
well,
I can't
let's
imagine what they
not
would
go
argue
that
about.
far into it. But on the aspect of like, imagine if you put a space shuttle and there's two people in there, one dude's Japanese and one dude's American, English, and they can't communicate because they both don't speak each other's language. There would be a hell of a lot less fighting if they both couldn't understand each other. Like they just have to use like head nods and gestures and stuff. Like, do you want this piece of an apple? The dude just nods his head up and down or something. It'd be way easier to
I don't
get
know. Maybe
along.
it could backfire and there'd be more fighting. It's like
That's true.
so frustrating if someone doesn't understand what you're talking about. Um,
It
I don't
depends
know.
on how they say it.
I would act pretty irrational when I think back when I studied abroad, and I was like a dumb kid, so I was just assuming like, why don't they speak English? Like everyone everywhere, and then
Really? You didn't decide to learn their language? Like, you have to
well,
understand,
I
like
learned the language where I was studying abroad, but when they sent me to Barcelona or something, I'm not going to learn Catalan or whatever it's called
I feel
just
see,
for this
I
one
I
trip,
think
and
of
that you
that
would get frustrated.
differently.
Like, I'm just trying to find my hotel, and then they like talk to you in this weird like Spanish French mix, and you're like, what is happening? I have no idea where I'm at. So I can imagine people would just get even more frustrated.
I think of that differently as the aspect of if I go to another country and they don't know English, I have to learn their language so I can be able to
Yeah.
survive here. But you're
Oh,
like,
I
"No,
learned.
fuck
It
it."
was like uh learn the hard way, and now I'm not an idiot, so I try to be as respectful as possible. But I was like 19, so it's just like,
So there should be an age limit for when you go into outer space. We should have this planet be
yeah,
for the young kids, and then when you turn into an adult, you go to a whole new planet.
yeah. There's like Spring Break Planet, and then there's
No, no, we don't do the spring break shit. They stay on the same planet, but once they're adults, like they're out of like maybe past 24 or something, you go to a whole adult planet where it's a lot more civilized. You don't have to worry about stupid kids. And then when you get like into your 70s, you get an elderly planet where you just fucking golf all day. Like that's all you do is drink Arnold Palmers and just golf. Like that's the retirement planet.
that's where Trump would be.
It's like you get on the planet. It's like, wow, there's golfing. What's that building over there? It's like, oh, that's the cemetery because this is the elderly planet. So a lot of them die when they get here. It's like, oh my God, that's terrible. Like, because here's another aspect we didn't even think of. When you go to another planet like Mars, the gravity's different. So then you would have to
Yeah,
pick for the elderly people, you would have to pick a planet that has less gravity. So they wouldn't be like, maybe that would fix their spines. They're usually hunched over. Like maybe that would have
yeah.
them straighten up a little bit.
I love this sci-fi show called The Expanse. Have you ever watched it or heard about it? It's interesting. So it's like there's obviously far-fetched crazy crap in it, but they try to make it more grounded in reality than say Star Wars or something. But a lot of that factors into it is like the people on Earth have the longest lifespan because the weight of gravity makes their heart work harder, so they're healthier overall. And then Mars is like second, and then people that live in this place called the Belt, which is like the end of the Milky Way or so, have very short lifespans and these weird long slender bodies and like bones that are fragile and break because they've all lived in low gravity or hardly any gravity like their whole life. So their bodies just aren't building strength and their hearts aren't strong, and like they when they go to Earth, like for say being like a prisoner or something like that, because they're like fighting like these different planets in the show. It's crazy. uh they keep them in this like tube of water. It's fucking nuts. Like if you watch this show, but it's like because they will die from the gravity otherwise. And they're like interrogating these dudes like stuck in these like tubs of water, like, and it's nuts because I didn't even think about it because I'm like, yeah, has Elon Musk said anything about like, hey, by the way, I hope you're cool with dying at the age of 50 if you live on Mars, or what age do you get to live to if you go there?
It's kind of like
um
The Boy from Mars, the movie where these astronauts were sent into space, and then they ended up living up there for a couple of years, but one of them had a baby, and since the baby was born on Mars, but I think
yeah,
by the time he was like 8 or something, they brought him down to Earth, and then he died because like he just couldn't adjust to the
yeah,
gravity and
it's
everything.
just like that. Yeah, so I didn't even think about that because I'm like, that changes everything. Like I guess that will be the true test to see if can people even do it. maybe that's why they haven't even done it yet, is they haven't found a way to fix that to where they can't spend that much time on the moon or Mars without, you know, some kind of medicine or something that would make them last. But
Well, even like when the astronauts come down here after they've been up in space, they have to adjust in like a decompression chamber, get used to the gravity of everything down here because it's such a
yeah,
impactful thing because they've just been in zero gravity for so long.
yeah. But if everyone's lifespan is so short, I feel like a Mars colony or something like that would be a really depressing place, don't you think so?
I'd rather be born and live on a planet for like 30 years that had the worst gravity possible. So then when I do come to like Earth, I'm like fucking Superman, where it's like this desk used to weigh 6 tons. And it's like now you can just flip shit with like a finger because you're just
Yeah,
massively strong.
yeah. Maybe you'd be right because like you just use old people's because their hearts have already worked hard enough, and like now they're just living easy, like with light gravity on Mars, like a retirement community.
I just thought of the best idea.
Imagine golfing there. Yeah, you're right.
I
You
just thought
you
of the
get so
best
far.
idea for astronauts is like if we're trying to study alien life, imagine you figure out where they're coming from, what planet, then look at the level of gravity that they have. And that'll tell you what size they're going to be. Cause if it's a lot of gravity, then they're probably big fucking people. You know what I mean? So it's like, all right, we have giant ogres coming over here from planet South Alpha Centauri or some shit. That makes more sense on the justice of like maybe these are what they look like rather than our idea of like little green men, which I don't think is the possibility.
Yeah, I don't know. Guess it all depends. Like if it's low gravity, then they would be tiny. I don't know. I act like I know what I'm talking about, but I feel like
I don't think anybody really knows what they're talking about when it comes to space, man. Everybody's kind of just shooting shit up in the
yeah.
air, like, bam, I'm going to shoot this firework off until it hit. Like, how many people let off those balloons with a candle in it? Like, do those ever make it to like the upper atmosphere where like a fucking 747's coming by and they just hit it?
I don't know. I don't think they make it high up at all. Well, they just
Don't
pollute the
crush my
place.
dreams. You're supposed to make a wish on those things.
Yeah, I like to imagine that even Neil deGrasse Tyson's just BSing like the whole time has made it. Who knows? Like
Guys, I've just been making up random words and they all happen to be planets.
he's like, let's be real. A lot of you guys are gonna pay to see me if I say that we are within 100 years of finding aliens compared to me saying there's no chance.
I love it because if you had a travel pamphlet on like a moon or a planet that you would want to go live on, I would pick the one that would sound the most dangerous because I bet you it's like Greenland and Iceland. Once you get there, you're like, this is nothing like the fucking brochure. Like, it's a lot better.
Yeah, that's funny. That well, I know. I guess it's not too crazy to think people would just pay to go to the moon for fun, like in the future, because they're finally doing like the first space launch with just rich people that want to pay and go for fun. Did you see that?
Makes sense that they would send up all the rich people first.
Yeah, they're like, so they're gonna send a few rich people to have some fun, and then they're gonna send Tom Cruise to make a space movie, and then we'll figure out how we could do the important stuff.
Why the fuck does Tom Cruise get to go up there? It doesn't make
uh,
sense.
I think he's looking for L. Ron Hubbard up there. Some Scientology crap. I don't know.
Imagine if that turns out to be true, like all the Scientology
Oh
stuff. Like a
God.
dude just figured it out, but since it wasn't old, everyone just gave him shit to where he looks like a nut job.
Yeah, that's crazy. I'm just so baffled that all these like famous, prominent people like believe it. And I watched a documentary on it with my girlfriend, and we were just like shocked like how what they actually believe. There was a South Park episode on it when I was a kid, and I remember laughing really hard on it, and it even had like little text saying like this is actually what they believe, like at the bottom of it during the episode, while it's saying all this crazy crap about aliens and
Chris,
like
I've had
souls.
four people on here that are Scientologists, so some of their stuff when they talk about it, it's like it does make sense. Like, imagine if an alien comes down here and was like, "I'm gonna make you fucking Kevin Hart famous, but you got to be a Scientologist." You're gonna take that fucking deal. Like, you're gonna be like, "Yes."
Kevin Hart. Yeah, I don't know. It just sounded nuts, and then like all the money they pay to be in it, and then they like stalk you and try to make you come back if you leave, and all this creepy crap. Uh, I just thought it was ridiculous, and I thought it was so funny because when I was a kid, I thought the South Park episode was completely like a joke. And then as I'm watching the documentary, I'm like, holy shit, all that stuff they said in that South Park episode was like what they actually believe.
It's
So I
like
thought the text was a joke when it's like, this is what they actually believe. Like, because it was like during a part where alien souls were flying out of volcanoes and like spaceships were
yeah,
like
yeah.
burning.
It's a thing though. What's the difference between Scientology and Jehovah's Witnesses? Because once you let the door open up, then they just constantly follow you to the ends of the earth. Like I still get emails from Flat Earth Society. I still get emails, and they're all from one interaction where I was like, "Hey, would you want to talk about this on a podcast?" And now they just don't leave me the fuck. Every newsletter, I'm like, I'm off the subside. That's why I don't trust people that ask for my email. Anybody asks for my email, I say, why the fuck do I need to give you my email to buy a shirt?
You found a flat earther and had him on the podcast.
I found a bunch of people that believe in flat earth. And it's funny because I had a volcanologist say it's all bullshit. Same with hollow earth. I was like, all right, just checking what
And
we know,
then
you know.
you're like, but how do you feel about lizard people? Just keep.
Dude, don't even get me started on the birds are not real thing. That one threw me off like a motherfucker.
That's funny. I'm just wondering where you find these people.
Just Google, just where you would find any answer to the universe. Just Google it, type it in.
Flatearther.com forums and say anyone down for an interview.
They don't go by an actual flat earth page. What they do is they use a thing called hydraulic pen, and it's like a pen that's made with like it just looks like a regular ink pen, but they're a fucking cover page for a flat earth society. They do was sending me pictures of his books and stuff he's made, and I'm like, look, I already got banned off Facebook for 24 hours for doing the Freemason episode, so I don't feel like talking about flat earth.
It's like, stop. You just don't have that batshit crazy chick from Georgia, Congress, whatever, on your podcast.
I'll
She's
talk
like,
to anybody who's crazy.
yeah, she literally believes like any conspiracy, you'll name it. She's like, yeah, I'm down. I believe that one too. Like,
I want to just talk to him and be like, what happened in your life that made you believe this? Like, do you use hollow earth as a representation of your heart because it's hollow because someone broke it at one point? And they're like, no, I just believe there's mole people. I'm like, okay. Okay.
they seem pretty normal other than they're batshit crazy.
Yeah, that's the big one. It's like a dating app. It's like when you find out the person's like, oh wow, she's really pretty. Ooh,
Yeah,
white
she's like,
supremacist. It's like skip.
yeah, it's just like, yeah, I'm pretty normal. I just have one thing I need to warn you about. The earth is flat and hollow, and 9/11 was an inside job. And you're just like, all right, who the fuck
Hitting
is
all
this
the
person?
steps on the way down, aren't you?
That's funny. Yeah.
Well, Chris, man, I appreciate you doing the podcast again, man. Where can people find you at?
Yeah, so you can follow us on Instagram at the History Watch. You'll see we got a lot of our episodes from YouTube on there as IGTV episodes now. So you can just watch it all on Instagram since that's where all our following pretty much likes to live anyway. And we have a YouTube if you prefer that, if you want to watch it on TV. We got episodes, like 6 episodes or so, where we show like movies and television of historical events and link them all together for fun little history lessons that aren't boring. So yeah, you can check us out there and follow us on Instagram. My girlfriend pretty much runs that, and she does daily history facts. She'll sometimes knock out 3 a day or so, and they're really interesting. So I'll show one example before I get off here, just because I thought it was funny, a good find. I want to know what you think of it because you're into crazy shit like that.
I don't know if that's a compliment or an insult.
No, I think you find this stuff funny. So Russia has a Patriot Park, and it's referred to as Military Disneyland, and it allows visitors, including children, to ride in tanks, shoot guns, eat military rations, and purchase military gear. And the photo is a bunch of kids playing on top of tanks with like 50 caliber machine guns.
Because they start them young, bro. They start them fucking young.
It's literally when they ask Putin about it, he says, pretty much start them young. Like, we need to get patriotism in a family friendly environment to where kids can start understanding guns and things to protect their country.
You gotta respect his game a bit. Like he is pretty much a savage, but on the aspect of like he doesn't give a shit that you know he's a savage. Like most people hide that.
Yeah. He says it's also to make people less scared or to be excited about when they're mandatory conscripted at the age of 18 for their forced military service, which I heard is terrible, by the way. They just like haze the crap out of these kids. And um but yeah, another world over there. And when they unveiled the park, they also announced that they had 40 new nukes casually. So,
Just low key slide that in there, like at the
yeah, he's
end,
like,
like, oh, by the way, also with the opening of this amazing park, we have cotton candy and 40 new nukes coming your way.
yeah, I think he's just trying to be like, look out, America, don't mess with us. Even our kids are playing with tanks at this point. But yeah, I thought you'd find that's pretty funny. That was an interesting one. That's
Start them young, bro. Start them young.
awesome, man. Well, it was great talking to you. Love to be on the podcast anytime you have me.
Well, thanks for listening to this episode of Out of the Blank podcast, and stay tuned for our next episode.